Imagine this, you're at your own niece's wedding reception. The room is packed with family you haven't seen in years. And right in the middle of the toast, your sister-in-law grabs the mic and says, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Thank God someone responsible is finally here, because crazy auntie clearly can't be trusted with anything." The whole room bursts out laughing. At you. I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. 30 seconds later, the laughter died. And by the end of that 2-minute video, my sister-in-law was white as her own wedding napkin. If you've ever been humiliated in front of people who were supposed to love you, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because this is the story of the most ice-cold, perfectly legal revenge I've ever witnessed. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Let's dive in. My name is Emily. I'm 28, and the crazy auntie that they were laughing at that day was my Aunt Linda, my mom's younger sister, the woman who basically raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 9. Aunt Linda never married, never had kids, and according to the rest of the family, that made her a failure. She was the weird one who talked to plants, collected antique cameras, and, worst of all, refused to act her age. She wore bright colors, laughed too loud, and always had some wild story about traveling alone through Morocco or photographing auroras in Iceland. To my cousins and my uncle's new wife Karen, yes, the Karen, Linda was the family embarrassment. The running joke was that she was one cat away from being the crazy cat lady, except she was allergic to cats, so she just had plants. Lots of plants. But here's what they never bothered to find out: Aunt Linda wasn't broke. She wasn't lonely. And she definitely wasn't crazy. She was a ghost in the machine. Back in the early 2000s, when most people were still figuring out MySpace, Aunt Linda was quietly teaching herself how to code. She built obscure little websites for photographers, then apps, then entire back-end systems nobody ever put her name on. She worked remotely before remote was cool, and she got paid in silence. By 2023, Aunt Linda was the majority shareholder of a private AI startup that specialized in photo restoration and deep learning video enhancement. Let me paint you the full picture of what Aunt Linda had actually built while everyone was busy calling her the plant lady. In 2008, she started a tiny one-woman company called Evergreen Pixel. The name was a joke to herself, evergreen for her plants, Pixel for the only thing she loved more than photosynthesis. She registered the LLC in Delaware, set up a P.O. box, and never put her real photo on the website. The site was just a black page with a single line: "We bring dead photographs back to life." No questions asked. At first, it was simple restoration work, colorizing old wedding photos, removing scratches from baby pictures, stitching together torn negatives for Holocaust survivors and war veterans. She charged whatever people could afford. Sometimes nothing. Word spread in the niche photography forums she haunted under the username parrot88. Then, around 2014, she taught herself deep learning in her spare bedroom. She bought 4 second-hand gaming PCs, lined them up on a table surrounded by monstera leaves, and started training neural networks on public domain film archives. She was obsessed with one question nobody else was asking yet: what if you could take a blurry, flickering 8mm home movie from 1962 and make it look like it was shot on an iPhone 15? By 2017, Evergreen Pixel had quietly released a tool called Relive. Upload any degraded video, and 30 minutes later you got back 4K, 60 frames per second, color-corrected, stabilized footage with the faces subtly sharpened so your dead grandparents suddenly looked alive. Like they were standing in the room with you. Museums started calling. Then Netflix for their documentaries. Then the FBI's Victim Identification Unit. Aunt Linda never took a meeting in person. Everything was email and wire transfers. She hired 3 remote engineers who thought they were working for some mysterious Silicon Valley recluse named E. Verdant. They still have no idea their boss waters orchids in fuzzy socks. In 2020, during lockdown, she open-sourced part of the code to help families recover water-damaged footage from hurricanes. The internet crowned the anonymous developer a hero. Reddit made E. Verdant a legend. Meanwhile, Aunt Linda was on the other side of the country hand-feeding her carnivorous plants and laughing at the memes. By 2023, Evergreen Pixel had been acquired, very quietly, by one of the big three visual effects houses that works on Marvel movies and true crime reenactments. The deal was $187 million up front, plus earnouts that could push it past $500 million if certain forensic contracts came through. Aunt Linda took 68% of the equity and made her 3 engineers multimillionaires overnight. She still never put her face on anything. The only splashy thing she ever did was buy the domain auntlindaWasRight.com and redirect it to the company's new forensic division page, just in case anyone from the family ever got curious. And the best part? The core algorithm that powers the whole thing is nicknamed Parrot internally, because Aunt Linda trained the facial recognition module on thousands of hours of her own home videos, the same ones she used at the wedding. Which means every time some police department restores footage to catch a cold case killer, or some studio brings a dead actor back for one last scene, they're literally running on Aunt Linda's childhood memories of teaching me to ride a bike and holding my mom's hand at the funeral. So yeah. While Karen was busy telling the country club that Aunt Linda would die broke and alone surrounded by ferns, Aunt Linda was single-handedly revolutionizing how the world sees the past, and banking enough money to buy Karen's entire zip code twice over. And the only time she ever flexed any of it in public? 2 minutes. 1 projector screen. 1 wedding. Checkmate. And she kept every single family slight in a little mental notebook. Fast forward to my cousin Sarah's wedding last summer. Sarah is Karen's daughter, my uncle's stepdaughter. I love Sarah, don't get me wrong, but ever since Karen married into the family 8 years ago, she's been on a mission to erase anyone who doesn't fit her perfect suburban Instagram aesthetic. And Aunt Linda? She was enemy number 1. The wedding was beautiful, outdoors, string lights, the whole Pinterest thing. I was a bridesmaid. Aunt Linda showed up in a bright turquoise dress and a massive sun hat covered in fake parrots. People started whispering the second she walked in. During cocktail hour, I watched Karen corner the wedding planner and say, "Please make sure that woman doesn't end up in any of the professional photos. She's eccentric." Then came the speeches. My uncle went first, sweet, boring, fine. Then Karen took the mic. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about how Sarah was finally surrounded by real family, and then, without naming names, launched into this whole bit about how some people never grow up and live in a fantasy world, and how grateful she was that Sarah had responsible adults in her life now. The dig was obvious. People turned to look at Aunt Linda, who was standing near the bar sipping a margarita like she hadn't heard a thing. A couple of cousins actually laughed out loud. I felt my face burn. I started walking toward the front to say something, anything, but Aunt Linda caught my eye across the room and gave the tiniest shake of her head. Not yet. Then Sarah's maid of honor handed the mic to Aunt Linda. For anyone who still wants to say a few words. Karen's smile froze. Oh. Linda, you don't have to. But Aunt Linda was already walking up, turquoise dress flowing like she owned the place. The DJ, bless him, dimmed the lights a little and pulled down the big projector screen they'd used earlier for the slideshow. Karen hissed, "This is not the time for one of your little home movies." Aunt Linda just smiled. "It's only 2 minutes, Karen. I'm sure you can spare 2 minutes." She plugged her phone into the system with a little HDMI adapter she'd apparently brought in her parrot hat. The screen lit up. The title card appeared in elegant white text on black. "For Sarah, some memories your mom didn't want you to see." The first clip started. It was old family video, shaky camcorder footage from Christmas 1998. A 9-year-old version of me opening presents under the tree. My parents laughing in the background. And there was Aunt Linda, 26 years old, holding the camera, narrating in that same bright voice she still has today. Then the video cut to another Christmas. And another. Year after year of Aunt Linda showing up with presents, cooking dinner, putting me to bed when I had nightmares. There was footage of her teaching me to ride a bike, holding my hand at my parents' funeral, helping me with homework at 2 a.m. before her night shift coding job. The room was dead silent. The next section was text overlays on black screen, white letters fading in one by one. 2009, Linda paid for Emily's braces when no one else would. 2012, Linda took out a second mortgage to cover Emily's college application fees. 2015, Linda worked 80-hour weeks so Emily could study abroad without debt. I didn't even know about half of this. Then came the screenshots. Bank transfers. Thousands of dollars labeled for Sarah's private school tuition, don't tell Karen. Emails from Karen to the school asking them to remove Linda Thompson from the emergency contact list, she is not stable. A scanned letter from Karen to my uncle, if Linda keeps filling the girls' heads with her hippie nonsense, I'm going to have to limit contact. And then the final blow. A crystal clear video, taken just 6 months earlier, of Karen at a country club brunch, drunk on mimosas, telling her friends. Honestly, the best thing that ever happened to this family was those people dying. At least now we don't have to pretend to like that weirdo sister. She's basically a hoarder with plants. I give it 5 years before she's on some TLC show. The clip ended. 2 minutes exactly. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Aunt Linda unplugged her phone, turned to the crowd, and said, calm as anything, I just thought some of you should know who's really been holding this family together while certain people were busy posting #blessed. Karen's mouth was actually hanging open. Her mascara had started to run from the shock. Sarah, sweet Sarah, was crying. Not angry tears. Grateful tears. She ran straight past her mom and threw her arms around Aunt Linda. Karen tried to recover. This is inappropriate. You edited that. You're twisting. Aunt Linda cut her off with the softest voice I've ever heard. Everything on that video is timestamped and unedited. I'm happy to send the raw files to anyone who wants them. Including the part where you said I should have died in the car with my sister. Mic drop doesn't even begin to cover it. Karen stormed out. My uncle, poor guy, just stood there looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Half the guests started clapping. The other half were too stunned to move. Later that night, Sarah found me by the dessert table. She was still holding Aunt Linda's hand. She whispered, I had no idea. Mom always told me Aunt Linda was unstable. That she was jealous of us. I just laughed. Sarah, your mom's about to find out what unstable really means when Aunt Linda's lawyers finish drawing up the new trust. See, Aunt Linda had quietly been the trustee of the inheritance my parents left, for both me and Sarah. Karen had been trying to get control of it for years, claiming Linda was mentally unfit. That video wasn't just revenge. It was evidence. And the next week, Aunt Linda removed Karen as a beneficiary entirely. Karen spent the next month trying to salvage her reputation, posting tearful apologies on Facebook, claiming the video was taken out of context. Nobody bought it. Half the family unfollowed her. Sarah moved in with Aunt Linda for the summer to get to know her better. Translation, she never really moved back. And Aunt Linda? She went back to her plants, her cameras, and her quiet little empire that nobody ever saw coming. Sometimes justice doesn't scream. Sometimes it just shows up in a turquoise dress and a parrot hat, and hits play. Here's the thing, Aunt Linda never needed their approval. She didn't do it to humiliate Karen, she did it to protect the truth. And in the end, the people who mattered saw exactly who the real crazy one was. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Some of us are just waiting for the perfect 2 minutes. So that's the story of the wedding video that ended a tyrant. If this made your blood pressure spike and then drop in the best way possible, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell, because I post new revenge stories every single week. In the comments, tell me, what's the most savage mic drop you've ever seen at a family event? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one. Stay petty, my friends.